Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And we are going to continue our discussion about human and planetary evolution. And in our last video, we were discussing the two major impulses in the cosmos, the evolutionary impulse and the devolutionary impulse, or the Christ impulse and the Antichrist impulse, or the regenerative impulse or the preservation impulse and the devolution, degenerative impulse. We're really deeply exploring some of the ways that those two impulses shape our world and shape us as human beings. So we are going to go even deeper into that discussion today, and we're going to focus the first part of this lecture on just summarizing what the regenerative impulse is, really clarifying that and really discussing that. And the last part of this lecture today is actually going to be on the spiritual hierarchies or the angelic hierarchies. And we're going to discuss how humanity is actually part of the angelic hierarchies or part of the spiritual hierarchies, an integral part of the spiritual hierarchies, how the human being is actually an angel and that our form is actually angelic. And we're going to get right into that for the last part of this lecture today. So let's dive into the regenerative stream. Now, on my channel, I've lectured extensively on this topic, and I've used a lot of different words to describe this very powerful impulse in the cosmos that leads to human evolution. So let's look at some words that describe the regenerative stream or the organic human evolutionary stream. So one of the words that describes the stream is rebirth. So when we are attuned to this stream, when we're attuned to this impulse, it's the force that allows us to be reborn, or it leads to our transformation. It leads to the transmutation of our darkness to light. So this is the impulse, the energetic force that leads to transmutation. And that in turn leads to the rebirth process or the regeneration of ourselves and our form. Okay? So another word that's very good to associate with the regenerative stream is evolution. When we tap into this impulse, and another word for this is also the Christ impulse, or the solar impulse can be used as well. When we tap into that, it also leads to human evolution. Because the more that we align with this, the more we are able to transform ourselves and evolve with the cosmos, with the sun and with the earth. Another good word for this is resurrection. The resurrection mysteries are the mysteries of the regenerative stream or the organic human evolutionary stream. And the process of resurrection, which is a deep, deep, deep mystery tradition that existed, again, as I mentioned last time, it existed before the incarnation of Christ. And many of these rituals are still carried out today, even if only symbolically. And so it is this regenerative impulse that is also symbolized in the rite of resurrection. All right, is this idea that we can transform ourselves, that we can metamorph into a higher version of ourselves. That's what the regenerative stream is. But it also represents preservation, because when we are going through our process of transformation, transmutation, and rebirth in our life, we're not just sort of evolving into a higher version of ourselves. we're also preserving the God force within us. We're also preserving our soul essence. We're also preserving that Christ God essence that's within us. So it is also a force of preservation as well. Evolution, regeneration, preservation. And of course, the name that I think is also very powerful is, again, the Christ impulse, the Christ stream as well. All right. So let's get into a little bit deeper into what happens when we embody this impulse, when we embody the Christ impulse. So when we embody that force within us, within our hearts, something very spectacular happens, and that is that we actually begin to evolve with the cosmos. So we actually start walking in tandem with nature and with the cosmos. So we start evolving with the sun, and we start evolving with the earth. And we're now part of nature. We're walking in step with the natural evolutionary rhythm of life itself. And this may sound strange because you may think, aren't we naturally doing this? And the answer is no. This is not a given. There were times in prior epochs of the earth, in the Lemurian epoch, part of the Atlantean epoch, and earlier, where humanity didn't really have a whole lot of free will. And humanity didn't really have individuality. The form was individuated, so they had a body, but humanity's minds were all interconnected in sort of like a group mind, or a natural clairvoyance, as sometimes described in anthroposophy. There was a natural interconnectedness. And this is also called pre-fall humanity. Pre-fall humanity. So humanity was in kind of an innocent state. They couldn't really harm themselves, and they couldn't really harm each other, because the moment that human beings in that earlier condition, it was more like an infantile condition, the moment that we would do that, our mind and consciousnesses were so interconnected, so interwoven, we would immediately see that it was wrong and that it was going against God. So in that way, we couldn't sin. We couldn't hurt one another, and we couldn't really hurt ourselves, or at least the idea of hurt and harm wasn't to the degree that it is now, which is known as, post-fall. So in earlier times of human evolution, we didn't really have the ability to hurt one another like we do now. We didn't really have the ability to degrade. It's kind of like the safety button was on. But then halfway through the Atlantean epoch, something very incredible happened. And that was that we received something called manas in the Eastern tradition, or we received our mind. We received the ability to think and to be objective. And we could suddenly not everybody was able to receive this impulse, but the impulse arrived, and many, many human beings began to take it on. And that represented a shift from being basically a kind of hive mind that was interwoven naturally and just knew everything, could remember everything, knew they were interconnected with higher worlds and each other, to a fall from that knowing and a fall from that interconnectivity, that natural interconnectivity, into this development of needing to understand why things were going on, to be able to do calculations, to think logically, to be rational, to really understand why things were going on instead of just knowing. And so in this way, humanity sort of lost their intuition and lost this interconnectivity with one another that was really natural prior to that. But we gained the ability to think, and we gained our individuality, or our I, capital I. And ever since that, halfway through Atlantis, we have been developing our individuality, developing our I. And in that sense, that struggle of finding balance has also been accompanied with kind of a fall deeper and deeper and deeper into matter. Okay. So we have to understand that early phase of humanity, because that allows us to understand that at that point that we got our individuality and our sovereignty, we also got the ability to choose. We also got free will, significantly more than we'd ever had before. We had the free will to create ourselves and to discover ourselves and to objectively know and understand the world around us, which is part of the next evolutionary phase. We don't get to evolve into an individuated, ascended being unless we can individuate fully and spiritualize ourselves as an individual. But we have that incredible creative power to become a master and really create our life and create the world around us uniquely. But with that incredible gift, with that I, with the mind, also came the other side of that blade, that double-edged sword, which we also got the ability to destroy ourselves and other people. And that's what happens when we evolve and we gain a new faculty, is that there's always an incredible gift and opportunity for evolution, or the regeneration and rebirth of ourself, right? Or there is that opportunity for devolution, using that force improperly, wielding that force improperly. So these abilities that we take on as we evolve can make us or break us. We have to learn how to use the faculties that we develop over time. And by faculties, I mean the gifts that we receive, like the gift of mind and thinking, right? So this meant that human beings for the first time could choose to evolve themselves or go down a very different path and devolve. And this is what's also known in Christianity and many other esoteric traditions as the fall. The fall is because we finally had the knowledge of good and evil. We could finally walk the path of good consciously, or we could fall into evil if we didn't develop. And so this is also why our current post-Atlantean epoch and where we are precisely is also about the knowledge of good and evil. And so this idea of polarity and duality and the higher and lower path of evolution is absolutely crucial for us to understand ourselves and where we are in our evolution as human beings. So by consciously choosing to align with the Christ impulse, we are regenerated and we are aligned with the natural evolution in the cosmos. So this means that we are evolving with our sun, we are evolving with the earth, and that we're also connecting in with other planetary chains and systems that are evolving as well. So that also means, with that tuning into the Christ impulse and taking it on consciously, deciding to do that, that also means that we're staying in step with the planet's evolution in the solar system. So we're staying in line with the evolutionary chain on the planet Venus, the evolutionary chain on the planet Mars, and we're not falling in a weird disharmony with essentially the evolution of our own solar system, which we can do. So it's very important to align with the Christ impulse so that we are in time correctly, or so that we are evolving in step with the cosmos. And one of the most incredible things that I find is that human beings are actually not just some animal, some ape that has randomly evolved on this rock floating in the solar system. You know, this has to be the most bizarre, empty, depressing, and quite frankly, disconnected and strange ideology I can think of. Total materialist, dark ideology about humanity that does not at all include the higher dimensions, the higher worlds, or any kind of spiritual information at all. Human beings are actually an integral part of the spiritual hierarchy. All right. So the spiritual hierarchies go by a couple different names. So in anthroposophy, you'll hear it called the spiritual hierarchy or the angelic hierarchy. And then in Judaism, sometimes it's called the choirs of angels or the 9 choirs of angels. In the Eastern traditions, they can be delineated sometimes into the different areas of heaven or the different kinds of Buddhas. But there is a place for this spiritual hierarchy in every tradition, and it's probably one of the more important aspects and topics when it comes to looking at why human beings evolve over time. So the human form has been essentially created over a very long period of time as an extension of the spiritual hierarchies or the angelic hierarchies, or as the embodiment of the lower level of this hierarchy or the most material level of this hierarchy. And at every single point in our evolution, at every single point of metamorphosis, it has been because a great being in the spiritual hierarchies has sacrificed an aspect of themselves for us to evolve. And so planetary creation, the impulses that create and destroy worlds, the impulses behind the creation of human beings, all of that is because of the spiritual hierarchies and the impulses that we've received from them. And so ultimately, once we complete our evolution, so once we complete our planet Earth's full evolutionary cycle, it's 7 incarnations, we will ultimately be a human angel. Now, we are only halfway through that journey and in the most materially dense part of that journey. But once we complete it, once we can continue the spiritualization arc, we will actually become the 10th angel in the hierarchy of angels. So we are literally, our human body, our form, is literally now spiritualizing itself. We are now spiritualizing our form to become a full-on member of the angelic hierarchies. Okay, so this is very, very important to know because our form is divine. Our form is divine. And we are caretakers of our body, of our form. And we are direct descendants and recipients of these spiritual forces and angelic energies, if that makes sense. And ultimately, we can see the regenerative impulse or that Christ impulse within us as the impulse that keeps us connected to the hierarchy of angels. So if we are to modify our form through genetic engineering or through transhumanism, we actually take our form and we pervert it so that it is no longer in connection with the angelic hierarchies. It is no longer a direct embodiment of God. It is no longer in the running to be part of the 10th hierarchy of angels. Okay, so it's very important that we keep our form connected and interwoven with the spiritual hierarchies by honoring and being a good custodian of our form. So let's take a look at the spiritual hierarchies in which we will one day be an ascended part of. The first grouping of beings in the spiritual hierarchies are the seraphim, the cherubim, and the thrones. These are the primordial spirit beings that stood at the very creation of our solar system, forming the basis of its existence. Their consciousness formed the forces that created the earliest hum of our cosmos. They stand in closest proximity to the Godhead and directly embody it. The seraphim are embodiments of love. The cherubim are the embodiments of harmony. The thrones are the embodiments of will. It can be difficult to conceptualize such massive beings, the beings that gave to humanity the forces that make up our own essence. Their consciousness is revealed to us through the zodiac, or they express themselves as what we would recognize as the zodiac in this sort of celestial archetypal order. The beings of this hierarchy sacrifice themselves for the creation of our solar system, and thus we sense their presence as some of the most basic forces within us. Our feeling or perception of love, our sense of harmony and balance, and our will are all holy expressions of this divine spiritual order. The angelic hierarchies are not separate from us, but rather within us and working through us. The second group of beings in the spiritual hierarchy are the dominions, virtues, and the powers. These are a bit more tangible. If the first hierarchy is the base of creation as we know it, then this second hierarchy can be understood as the direct expression of it. If the first hierarchy is the creation of a solar system, then this second hierarchy represents all natural expressions of the solar system or the cosmos. All of the actions and laws lived out in angelic form, or all of the laws and actions given an embodiment. So, the second hierarchy is directly expressing the principles of the first hierarchy. They are carrying out and giving life and movement to it. They are purely animating it. The dominions represent wisdom. The virtues are the spirits of motion, movement, and the powers are the spirits of form, materialization. These beings also sacrificed themselves in order for our solar system to evolve, and their consciousness was further embodied, evolved, and individuated in the next order of angelic beings. It should be noted that each further embodiment of the spiritual hierarchies is becoming more and more human and more individuated from the original Godhead or the original hierarchy before it. The third hierarchy of angels you will recognize. Here we have the archi, the archangels, and the angels. The archi forms the particular higher impulse of a cultural epoch or civilization, or the great civilization on the planet. The archangels form the consciousness of certain individual cultures and can be experienced as inspiration within the human being, or drive the human being to create incredible concepts that represent a certain age. Angels are the forces that guide individuals in their life, and every person has a guardian angel. Like the other hierarchies, this third hierarchy also sacrifices something of themselves in order for our world to function, in order for humanity to function. When we understand the cosmos in this way, the cosmos is not a simulation or a computer program as it is trendy to believe today. That is merely describing the fourth dimension, or the lower astral plane and its particular operations or expressions. The best way to classify the cosmos is as a distinct hierarchy of spiritual beings, a direct embodiment and expression of actual holy angelic groups. This is how the cosmos was classically taught and understood, because our ancestors understood the structure of the cosmos much better than the scientists or even the mystics of today. So, let it be known that we are not interacting with empty waves or particles void of humanity, void of spiritual human life. We are made of expressing and living within a hierarchy of exalted spiritual beings. Beings that we can only feel and interpret as forces, but living beings nonetheless. Angels, though they very clearly vary in their origins, consciousness, and duties, are on an evolutionary path as well, just as humanity is. This is why in the later stages of development, beings that are labeled as angels have fallen or embodied certain devolutionary impulses in the cosmos. That led to them moving backwards in their own life wave. So it should be noted that this is only possible at the deeper levels of individuation and individuality, as we will see next. Like angels, humans can also fall, though at our stage of development, falling or taking on the devolutionary impulse looks different than it does when a higher angelic human falls from their particular hierarchy. This is because human beings, though an imperative expression of the angelic hierarchies overall, are sown deeper into matter and have more individuality than their predecessors. So, though they can all fall, they don't do so in the same way, and the dynamics are different the deeper in matter that you go. Let's get back to where we started today with the regenerative stream, or the Christ stream, or the organic evolutionary path. Since humanity is created from and is an extension of all of the above-mentioned hierarchies, it is of the utmost importance that we remain connected to them. We must also understand that our form, the human form, is an expression of them, of the angelic hierarchies. It is the angelic human template, and by proxy, a direct expression of God, of the cosmos at large. That is how significant and important our human form is the human template is at this point in time, before any major modifications have occurred. Our human form has formed over a very long period of time, slowly becoming more and more material in the direct image of God through the sacrifice of the spiritual hierarchies. For this reason, part of our task today, part of the task of our epoch, is to become the loving custodians of our form, to see our human body as a temple, so perfect in its existence that the only task we have left at this point in our evolution is to spiritualize our form into the higher planes, back from where we once came. This means that should any problems arise within our body, our task is to understand them, to see them as messages about our consciousness and perhaps even the condition of the world at large, and to lovingly work upon them, understanding that we are spiritual beings that have taken form to understand form. And the only way we can understand form or materiality or the lessons of our time is to learn how to affect materiality and evolve it through our own will and creative forces to become the magician, to become the master. And humanity is to be the masters of form. That means we must learn to spiritualize our form back into the higher hierarchies that form this cosmos. Understanding the spiritual hierarchy's role in human creation and evolution through the regenerative stream or the Christ stream allows us to properly be equipped to address many of the issues we see in the world today. It allows us to relax into the understanding that we are part of something much, much greater than ourselves. That our human evolution has a divine pattern in the cosmos, a sacred order. An order so ingrained in us that even if we forget its laws in this life, we still abide by them. Our only way to evolve is to learn them, to learn these laws and these truths. And through that learning, through that structure, that truth, to then know ourselves. Thank you everyone so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Feel free to share this material on your social media. If you enjoy my work, please consider supporting it through my membership site or by making a donation. Thank you.